Hi everyone, if you've got a Cricut Maker or you're thinking of getting one, this is a brilliant first project. Using the Cricut brand heavy chipboard, 2mm thick, and also the Cricut brand craft board and some wood glue, Aleen's tacky glue and some paint, we've managed to create this really cute witch's cottage. We've done it in black here, you can do it in any colour you like. This is my setup at home. We've cut out the Cricut chipboard. These are all the pieces here. If you need help downloading the SVG, getting it into Design Space and cutting chipboard, we've got another tutorial for that. I'll put the link in the description below. Now this piece here is the side panel and the second little sort of porch balustrade there, and we're simply going to glue one over the other. We're using basic wood glue. My husband had this in the garage. Any brand wood glue should be fine. It doesn't actually matter which side you glue the first balustrade on, but you will need to take note of kind of whether it's the left or right hand side so that you mirror it, but we'll show you that later in the video. But both the left and the right side are exactly the same, so whichever one you want to work with first, do that. You can see here I'm using loads and loads of glue and I end up scraping some off. You really want a nice thin layer, thick enough to sort of grab it, but not so that you get so much squeezing out. So I go back in with a one of those sort of nursery school glue sticks in a minute. It's ideal for scraping off and getting a sort of level piece, bit of glue there. And then just wipe the excess off as you go round. And this side piece kind of creates a layer which the front door and window panel butts up against. So it makes the porch sides look a bit more three-dimensional, but it also gives you the raised edge so you know exactly where to locate your door and window panel. This will become more obvious later. I like to sort of push the pieces down on a flat surface so you know that it's level all the way around. And you get such a lovely square edge with the Cricut Maker. It makes these jobs really easy. And then get some clips, some grips, clothes pegs, anything that's just going to sandwich those two layers together. You could also put some weights on top. Keep checking it's realigned. Sometimes when you squeeze something together it slightly pushes out of alignment. These are really handy actually, and cheap, and the red bit kind of levels with what you're doing, so it spreads it evenly. Just taking some more excess glue out. So then we get the second piece, and if you see there, it's just the mirror sort of opposite the first one, so we know to put this second layer this way round. So we definitely have a left and a right side then, and we do exactly the same. So I've sped this bit up, put all the glue round, level it off. And press it down. So we'll leave those aside to dry. And now we do the fun bit. We're going to choose the wallpaper. These are the sort of scrapbooking papers that you get in the hobby store. They're really cheap, they're lovely and thick. Sometimes they're printed on both sides. This is one of the smaller books. They did have the same book in a larger, but then they scaled up the pattern, and it's particularly this scale of pattern that I wanted. So I'm looking here, it's for a witch, but she's kind of a modern and slightly, I don't know, feminine witch. So we don't want anything too dark and grungy. I like to do my wallpapering first before I build, because it's so much easier to get the press down on a flat surface and work out sort of the edges. If you're going into something that's already built, it's difficult to get into the corners and things. So these just pull out, and they're so lovely and thick. And then I'm looking for a coordinating paper to go in the attic room. The first butterfly one is for the living room downstairs. I like that one, a nice little pattern rather than a big one. It's a small room, so you don't want it to overpower it. Then I go back through, double check everything, choose the same one I thought I was going to start off with. Now our sides have dried. Difficult to see there, the extra layer of the handrails. That's the edge I was talking about, where the door and window piece butts up to the edge. So what we're going to do here is just take a pencil and mark the thickness of that wall, because we don't want to wallpaper under the wall. So we only need to start the wallpaper at the edge of the wall. So I'm just making sure that it's square. And chipboard is a little bit bendy, so you want to make sure that it's pushed up against each of the handrail supports on the other side. Draw a line, and then that's where we know the wallpaper will start and finish. And then do it on the other side. That is the back frame piece. And then it was too difficult to hold that and draw the line, so I end up going back to use the edge of the front wall panel again. You could use any piece of chipboard here as long as it's the same thickness. And I could use a ruler and measure out 2mm, but sometimes materials aren't always exactly the millimetre size that they say they are on the packaging. And the wallpaper will go down to the floor because these sidewalls sit on the bottom piece. So they're flush with the bottom, and then I'm just going to draw a line at the top. As it turned out, I didn't actually need to draw this line because I decided to glue the top piece down onto the bottom piece once the bottom piece was glued in place. rather than cut both pieces and then glue, because I figured when you glue something it might just change where it sits, so better to glue the bottom piece, then when you're happy with that I'll put the top piece on. So I'm just measuring the gap between those two sort of 2mm boundaries on each side, so I know the total thickness of the piece of wallpaper that I want. And get my cutting mat. The mat underneath this is actually a silicone mat, so it's very sticky, which is great until you actually want to get something off of it, and then nothing slides off of it, but it's great for putting things like your cutting mat on. They don't slide around then. And just take my X-Acto knife. And you're better off doing gentle passes, sort of more lightly than one big heavy pass. It might tear the paper or drag it. So we do a dry fit, line it up with our lines, make sure we're happy. Then we get the second piece, because in the book that I used, they were just slightly short of the whole height of the side of the house, so we need to create a join, and they're not wallpaper, so they don't have an exact match. So I just found where I thought was okay visually. And then take the steel rule and then cut through so you get an exact match and a nice straight line. It's actually quite thick paper, it's really good quality. Check you're happy with the join, and then if you remember, we cut the sides off with the 2mm gap for the thickness of the wall, so we are now going to trim down the top piece to match that same sized piece. Just wondering how sharp my blade isn't. I don't think that was a new one, which isn't great. Try not to stab yourself with the knife, I nearly did then. And then go and trim the other side. So here I'm just dry fitting it again. So I used Aleen's tacky glue for this. You can use any glue. I've also used the glue sticks that you get, not hot glue sticks, the paper ones for paper, sorry, that you screw up from the bottom, it pushes it out the top. They're really good because they don't have as much water content as the squeezy glues, and that's what makes wallpaper bubble. Although this paper's so thick I didn't get any bubbling. So just get a nice thin layer over the chipboard. I changed to a regular sort of PVA glue because the tacky glue was just drying too quickly. This is why it's so much easier to do this before you build. Working on a flat work surface, it's easy to sort of apply it and see that where the edges should be, and then you can press down. And I use a brayer, which is, mine's my polymer clay roller actually, but any brayer will do, as long as it's clean, because you don't want to get any marks on your wallpaper. And that just smooths it out. And make sure it sticks down well. Take any excess glue off. You can see it's slightly bowed because I did put that aside to dry first, and it's the water content that bows it slightly. But as you build it out, you square it off so it pushes the bowing back out again. Again, too much glue. And apply the top piece, matching it up as best you can. All of these glues dry clear. Sometimes they're a little bit shiny, so the least glue you can have squeezing out, the better. And just make sure that's all pressed down evenly. You can't even really see the gap. So we'll leave that to one side to dry. Take out any glue that's squeezed out at the top. And next I'm going to mix a paint for the interior walls, and I want it to be as near as it can be to the sort of background colour in the wallpaper. So I've got a spare piece of the wallpaper there. Can't really tell on camera, it's a lovely soft pale green. Looks a bit beigeier there, so I'm starting off with a white. I'm using white gesso, so that kind of primes and paints at the same time. I was going to squeeze the green in and then realised how dark it was, so I thought I'll put that to the side, and you can always add more, you can't take it away, so only a little bit of that needed. It's quite a pale green on the wallpaper. So mix and mix and mix, and it's looking a bit blue, so I take some yellow and add that in. We're getting there, and I think it's duller than that, so I take some black and I add that in. It's just guesswork. And you can see there I also got some red, sort of a deep rust colour, to tone it down and give it some warmth. And it doesn't look like it there, but it actually came out really, really close in colour. I think the difference is on camera the paint is wet, so it shines more than you can, so you can't see the actual colour. Doing the same thing again there, marking out the 2mm gap because we don't want to paint where we're going to glue. And so I paint the rest of the interior walls, so that's one side of the door and window wall. And again, they're symmetrical, so you can't get it wrong. There's not a sort of a front and a back until you paint it, then you know which is the front and back colour. And because it's got a gesso base in this, it goes on lovely and smooth, it dries very quick, and it's priming it at the same time. So if you can get a white gesso, mine was just in a tube from the local hobby store. This is brown chipboard, so the colour does show through slightly. We end up doing 2 coats. So this is the interior wall for the other side. So that gap is the 2mm thickness of chipboard that we're going to have on the left and right hand sides. It's so much easier to paint and wallpaper on a flat surface. Set that one to one side. Now the back wall we've created as a frame, so you will be able to view the house as if you're looking through a picture frame. So that's what we're looking at here, the back wall. So this will be the inside of the back wall. And I'm going to go and have my lunch at this point, so I get some cling film, wrap up my palette so it stays nice and wet and doesn't dry out, and it gives the other pieces a chance to dry. You can also wrap your brushes in cling film as well. So we go back to the side piece now. The glue has dried, so we can just take the knife and trim the wallpaper off the top. It shouldn't take that many passes. I've got a horrendously blunt knife blade, I think. There you go, one beautifully flat wallpapered wall. So we take the cling film back off the paint. You see some spots in there. It's actually pigment that's come to the surface of the paint while it was resting. So I didn't do too good of a job of mixing it. And some of those spots then come out in the paint, but I quite like that because this is a cottage in the woods. It's meant to be a little bit grubby, like not brand new, so a few spots and dark areas are completely cool. And I think that's why it's a great first project. It's not got, most witches' cottages you wouldn't think are a show home, so if you do make the odd little mistake, we can cover it up. We'll call it aging. It's all good. Here's some more of those streaks, but actually you don't even see them in the finished when it's dried, so that was okay. So I'm giving everything a second coat now. You can see the difference. It suddenly looks lighter and it looks more consistent. So second coat of the back frame. If only we could paint this fast in real life, projects would go really quickly. Now this is the ceiling of the living room, which also is the floor of the attic room. I've decided to paint that in the same green rather than a white ceiling. And what I didn't do here was allow for the overhang of the ceiling into the porch area, which will be black. So I just go back and paint that over afterwards. Now I'm mixing the exterior paint. It looks black in a lot of photos, but you'll notice in others it's a definite purple hue to it. And I wanted a sort of purpley, lovely, elegant, dark grey. So I started off with a lot of black, and I over-mixed the amount of product that I needed because I didn't know if I was going to paint the roof or shingle the roof. I needed to touch things up. So when you're mixing a custom colour, always mix way more than you think. So I've added in some fuchsia, and then I'm adding some white gesso again so that it's a primer and paint. Gesso's lovely creamy thickness and dries quickly. So that's lightening it now to make it more of a grey. And you really can't see on the camera, but it's a grey with a sort of purple hue. A little bit more fuchsia. That wasn't fuchsia, that was another purple. And I think the thing with mixing paint is to have fun and really experiment. You can always go back the other way. I also mixed in a purple shimmer, and you really can't see that, and it doesn't make it glittery, it just adds a sort of luminescence that the light picks up sometimes. So again, this is the other side now of the door and window wall. If I was going to do this project again for myself, I would go and spray paint all of the pieces in a black or a dark grey, so that if there were any gaps, all you're ever going to see is the black or the dark grey through it. But because I'm doing this for you at home, you might not have somewhere you can spray. You might want to work in smaller pieces on your project, so painting by hand is perfectly okay. You still get a really nice finish. So that's the exterior of the front wall. This is the back, and we've included a layer option where, if you see there, we've cut some layers in craft board. These are included in the bundle, and you can't really see it because it's white on white, but it builds out to make it look like a picture frame. We've done that for the downstairs room and the attic room. So that's now the exterior of the rear wall. What I do go in at the end, and you'll see that in one of the future videos of the tutorial, is I take some gold and I highlight the sort of proud edges on this frame, and it then really gives it some dimension. So it looks a bit flat here, but we've got plans for that, and it ends up looking really fab. And this is where, if I'd spray painted all of the things black first, I wouldn't be having to go in by hand and edge this interior edge. Just get a small paintbrush, and if you go over into the green, touch it up from the other side. That's why it's always good to have a little bit extra paint mixed up for touch-ups. So that's the back frame completed, and this is the sort of gable end attic room frame. Again, we've got the layering pieces there for the detail. I should have used a bigger brush for this. And I think I painted both sides of this in this dark grey because I didn't feel that it needed to be the same colour as the interior, because we're hardly going to see it unless we're looking through the window from the other end. And I wanted a little bit of a darkness in the attic. Also handy having black nails when you're doing Halloween projects, because you can overpaint and you don't notice. Now this is the other end of the gable, and you'll notice in the photographs I swapped this window out for a round one because I felt it really added to the character to have the round window. So I've still got this one painted and put to one side for a future project. So the file in the Witch's Cottage bundle now is for the round window. And this is the porch balustrade, which needs painting on both sides. So we're looking at the interior side of one wall, and then we're going to have the door and window wall there between those two areas. This is probably one of the most fiddly bits to paint, and again, hence, if I was just doing it myself, I would have sprayed all of this. So this is the other side wall with the wallpaper on, and we're going to paint the balustrade on that one. And then once it's dried on one side, we flip them over and we paint the whole of the exterior of the side walls. And I've got a bigger brush. So we put that one aside to dry, and we do the other side of the wallpapered wall. Now thankfully I left a good amount of paint mixed up, so all I'm going to do is put this into a pot. Save it for another day, I just cover it with cling film and I put an elastic band around it, but if you've got a screw top jar, that would be good too. So these are the biggest, the 11 by 11 whole sheets of the Cricut chipboard, which make up the roof. So these haven't been cut in the machine, they're literally straight out of the packet. And what I'm showing you here is just how they fit with the gable end. And what we're going to do is mark out where the gable end comes down so that we know where to sort of fit our wallpaper to, because anything below that line will be hanging outside of the building under the eaves. So we just line up the gable end and draw a line across. I could measure it, but if you're going to put baseboards on or coving at the top, you're going to hide any small gaps anyway. And then we mark out the 2mm from either end for our walls or our gable end walls. And there's a small gap at the top of this one. And this is wider than the downstairs wall that we wallpapered, but what I forgot to factor in is that we recess the round window gable end wall, so it has that really cute overhanging roof. So I actually put too much wallpaper on this one, and I take it to nearly the edges. So all that happens is when, excuse my hair in that picture, when we've glued the roof together and we can see where the gable end wall finishes, I literally just go in with my black outdoor paint and paint over the wallpaper, and you can't tell. But at this point you could decide how sort of inset you want your gable end wall and only wallpaper up to that edge. So I put this on and then realise I'm actually going to go over the 2mm gap if we were putting the wall there, but it doesn't matter. I cut it back. So this is the sort of other side of the roof wall, the other 11 by 11 sheet. And what I'm doing here is I'm just lining them up so I can draw a line straight across from the bottom of one piece of wallpaper to the other. And I accidentally got some paint on the corner of the wallpaper, so I decided to make it look like an accident by design, and I just paint in the tops and bottom gaps. And if you look at it now, you wouldn't know what I'd done. So here we are with the, again, streaky paint where I'd left it, had some lunch, and the pigment's risen to the top. And I really love this effect on here. It looks all grungy like you'd expect to see in an attic. And this is a nice, I mixed it again to match the wallpaper, started off with the white gesso, added in some purple, and then put some black in to dull it down again. And I really think you've got to approach the mixing of paint with an element of fun. And if it goes horrendously wrong, just chuck it and start again. So this is the round window gable end wall now. We will see that because we'll be looking through the frame on the rear wall. So I've done that in a nice matching colour. And I just think that round window looks so cute. So here are the finished pieces, decorated and dried, ready to be put together. So join me for the next chapter where we're actually going to start to build this cute little cottage.